We are in Senate Bill 75. Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving me some grace on my tardiness here. Yes, I do have an amendment, if the revisor could. Give me just a moment to collect my thoughts here. Let's focus the one that talks about the language of up to. Yep.
Senator, would you like to explain your amendment or have the revisor?
I'll go ahead and have Revisor Lawrence go ahead and explain the amendment. Thank you.
Revisor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as the bill is currently drafted, the tax credit would be for $8,000 or $4,000. What this balloon would do is it would be an amount equal to the expenditures directly attributable to the cost of tuition and other related costs of attending the private institution. And so the $8,000 and $4,000 would be a maximum.
Senator Shane, would you like to comment on your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So the goal of this amendment is to acknowledge the fact that these dollar amounts, the $8,000 and the $4,000, may in many instances exceed the expenditures for the child. So the goal is that, kind of in the spirit of fairness, I guess we'll put it that way, that it would give the opportunity to focus on these specific costs associated with attending a private school.
Would you like to move your amendment?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Murphy. Discussion or questions on the amendment? Senator Petty.
My question would be, how would this be verified? Because we know that, well, at least from past information, that not every private school has tuition. Some are, there's tithing that goes on within their church community to pay for their education. So is there anything in place to verify these costs?
Senator Shane.
Thank you. I do have another amendment that is somewhat related to that issue, Senator Petty. But as it stands right now, there would not be direct proof or verification required beyond what would be claimed on the tax form.
My understanding is this would be similar to a charitable contribution. You would claim it on your taxes as you do a charitable contribution. Make sure you keep your documentation in case of an audit. So my understanding is it would function very similar to that. Other questions on the amendment? Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Just on those comments from the chair, I think it's very important. This is a tax credit and not a tax deduction. So while I do keep all of those receipts and things as I am filling out my taxes for deductions for all of the charitable organizations, this is in lieu of paying your taxes. This is saying you are paying. So again, I will not be supporting the amendment, but thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Amendment passes. Are there any other amendments, committee? Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a second amendment. If the revisor could please distribute that. So while that amendment is being distributed, this amendment strikes, let me make sure I have all of my numbers correct. Well, so on page 2, it strikes lines 19 through 28, which that was the portion of this bill that stated that the Department of Revenue could consult with the State Department of Education. So this amendment would strike that language and would make it for the citizens so that there's no added steps of disclosure where the citizen would simply make the claim on their tax form and again be subject to audit as the chair previously described. So this would strike lines 19 through 28.
And would you like to move your amendment?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Thomas. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. I know Arizona has similar legislation like this where members have been able to buy an espresso machine and then they are getting tax credit on their taxes. So I think this is causing even more of the ability to this happen, if the carrier could comment on that.
Senator Shane.
I think that what you're describing, at least looking at this bill, would be fraud, and that individual would be subject to criminal prosecution.
And I actually would agree that that would be fraud, but I know this is happening because of similar legislation in other states like this. And without the ability for the Department of Education to be able to have conversations with the Department of Revenue to actually talk about whether something is education related or not. I understand the intent of this, but again, I think this is bad legislation, and we are going to be on the hook for people paying for a lot of things that are not helpful for their students. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on the amendment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Amendment passes. Are there any other amendments to Senate Bill 75? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to pass the bill out as amended. Senator Shane.
Madam Chair, I move that we pass Senate Bill 75 as amended out of committee favorably.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Rose. Discussion on the motion. Senator Petty.
I just want to make some comments. This piece of legislation just continues to really, it's sad that we have this tax credit that we are referring to as helping low income when in fact it's not. And it, you know, it's now creating a tax credit for 100% of an amount donated and allows the total to in-law state taxes to go to $20 million a year, where it's no longer a scholarship. It's actually never been a scholarship. There's no.
Senator Petty, I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe you're referring to Senate Bill 87.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am referring to 87, not
Yes.
75. But I'm still speaking in the opposition of this. It does not, it increases that amount of money. I mean, well, it as the Senator Sykes said earlier, it's removing any checks and balances that are in place, whether the student is in public school or not. And I myself went to parochial school. I paid for my children to go to parochial school. It was a choice I've made. I think families do have lots of choices, but whether government should be financing those choices is not what public money should be used for.
Committee, are there any other questions or comments on the motion? Senator Argabright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm concerned about accountability with this type of legislation, and I don't know that I've heard any pieces of accountability other than maybe an example of someone not filing information correctly. I will stand opposed.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was with some colleagues from other states just this past weekend. One of those is a representative in Arizona. She was able to use an ESA for her child when it was specifically for low income. They have seen how this has increased and opened up to everyone, and her child actually had to sue the private school because they were not getting the education that they needed because of the expansion of this. So we have seen kind of a cautionary tale in other states. I do not think this is good. It's going to jeopardize, I think, our SGF by reducing by 125 million. So I will be opposing this legislation. Thank you.
Any other comments? I will reiterate, this is not an ESA. This is a tax credit. And I will continue to say accountability. I believe that this is ultimate accountability because it rests with the parents having options and choices, and they can go where they find the best educational opportunities for their student. And if they're not satisfied, they have options. And that's the ultimate accountability. So with that, seeing no other comments, Senator Gossage.
A quick question. So we've heard from some of the homeschoolers that they do not want to be a part of this. So there's nothing saying regarding homeschooling. Is that correct?
That is correct, other than they are eligible up to $4,000. But if they do not want to participate, they simply do not have to claim it on their taxes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
I would like to be on the record.
Senator Sykes wishes to be on the record. Senator Argabright, Senator Petty as no. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, committee. We will now turn our attention to Senate Bill 44 and a quick overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 44 would amend the Kansas Promise Scholarship Program to expand the post-secondary educational institutions that are available to participate in that program.
Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, do we have any amendments on Senate Bill 44? I see none. I'll entertain a motion for Senate Bill 44. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we pass out Senate Bill 44 favorably.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Murphy, discussion on the motion. Senator Gossage.
Madam Chair, I will not be supporting this amendment. I was concerned when we first passed the Promise Act that it would just become this big balloon that would go from 10 million, and now we've had 15 million. And we pick and choose which majors that the taxpayers are going to pay for scholarships for folks. And now we're hearing adults coming from other states that could come in. It was supposed to be just Kansans, and they would promise to stay here. It is just ballooning more than I ever anticipated that it would be. So I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Senator Petty.
Well, I think the Promise Scholarship, I have supported from the beginning, and I think it has achieved its goals, which is why others want it. But the unfortunate part about it is that this does not change the cap. And so that makes it more and more difficult for those schools that are already providing the Promise Scholarship to continue to do that. So that, for me, that does make it difficult with this legislation of expansion.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Committee, we will now turn our attention to Senate Bill 87. Again, with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 87 would amend 3 provisions of the tax credit for low-income student scholarship program. First, the bill would expand student eligibility for the program. Second, it would provide a period of time when the State Department of Education would have to provide notice of verification of student eligibility to the scholarship granting organizations. And third, it would increase the tax credit for contributions made to such program and provide for aggregate tax credit limit increases under certain conditions.
Thank you, committee. Any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, do we have any amendments? Senator Thomas.
Yes, Madam Chair, I believe I have an amendment.
And Senator Thomas, do you wish to explain it or have the reviser?
I will have Tamara do it since she's far better at it than I am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So currently, as the bill is written, the amount of credits allowed in any 1 year is not to exceed $10 million. This would increase that to $15 million. Additionally, the bill would provide that aggregate credit limit of $20 million. This would raise that to $25 million, and that would begin starting in tax years commencing after 2025.
Any questions on the amendment? Senator Thomas, would you care to comment?
Pretty cut and dry. I mean, I think she explained it very well. Yeah, thank you, Tamara.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this, and my reasoning is I have an amendment coming. But in statute, these scholarship granting organizations are required by law to expend this money within 36 months. 90% of the funds are supposed to be given out to, in scholarships, which they are not abiding by for the last several years. On those reports that we get, they're showing that they are not dispensing these funds. And I think at maximum they have distributed 70%. And so we are giving them more money when they in fact are not even getting the dollars in the hands of students. So I will be opposing this.
It's my understanding that they have already bumped up against the limit and would already have hit the trigger. And I think part of the consideration is once a student is in, they are grandfathered in, so those funds are committed even though they may not look expended. So I just want to provide that context. Senator Petty.
May I respond?
Senator Sykes.
So that is what we are hearing, but there's a difference between what they're doing and what is in law of what they are required to be doing. So if we want to expand something, we need to be looking at how the scholarships are established. So they are continuing to take in money, but they are not distributing it. Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Here we just did, this committee just voted favorably to pass out Senate Bill 44, which is a successful program, the Promise Scholarship, to help students continue their higher education and be successful Kansans moneymakers in our state. And it has a cap on it that we have not expanded, and yet they are at the limit. And now we're going to consider raising a cap of funding on a tax credit for, which it's not low income, it's not a student scholarship program, but we're raising the cap to provide to private schools. So I cannot be supportive of this, because if we want to really be using make the best use of our state monies, we should be raising the limit on our Promise Scholarship.
Tamara, this is a scholarship for low-income students. There is a qualifier for the federal poverty level. Is that not correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eligible students either have to have received a scholarship before in the program or have 250% of the federal poverty level.
Thank you for the clarification. Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe that there's been any findings that the funds expended for this program have violated the law in any way. I think that the program's been fully compliant with the law. And with the current cap of 10, 8.3 million was utilized last year, and so the 15 million allows for this program to continue to meet the needs of individuals who feel like they need that their children would benefit from this program. So I think that 15 million allows for that growth and to reflect what's happening with the program. But I would note, I don't think there's been any finding that expenditures of these funds has violated the law in any way.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I am looking at the report that was submitted. So the amount of contributions in 2024 that they received was $7.8 million, and they expended 5.5. Overall, the total of this year since 2016, they have brought in $46.2 million, and only the amount of individuals who have received those has 32.8. So they have, in fact, been violating the law. Thank you.
Senator Sykes, and this is, you are correct in the information you're looking at. However, it has been brought to my attention that there's a discrepancy between the Kansas State Department of Education report and the Department of Revenue report, which will show the 8.3 million. And I did contact the State Department of Education. They are looking into it, but there is a discrepancy, and they agreed that the Department of Revenue is the official report. And so there is some inconsistencies and discrepancies between those two reports. So I just want to make the committee aware of that. And we're trying to reconcile that, but the Department of Revenue numbers, which show the 8.3, are the correct numbers. So, Senator Gossage.
Madam Chair, I supported this original bill, and I support this amendment. Thing is that, we have low-income families that cannot take advantage of their child going to another school, having taught in public school. We all know there are certain children that don't necessarily fit in the public school setting and can benefit from a private school setting, maybe a smaller classroom size. I know of one student who was being badly bullied, and the mother would like to have taken him out of that setting. This is not just money being paid out of our SGF. It is magnanimous people who are saying, I would like to help a low-income child who would really like to benefit or could very much benefit. They have to jump through certain hoops to be qualified and to let them be able to go to have a private school experience or something of that nature. They can't designate which child receives the scholarship. They have to, and again, the parents have to be at low income. And I think this is an excellent program, and I would fully support this amendment.
Senator Petty.
Well, I am one of those magnificent people. I do support my parochial schools that my children attended, and the high school that they attended. I support both of them with my dollars that I choose to contribute. I am not taking a tax credit, and that's my choice, and I'm doing it because of my faith. And I'm sorry, but we really can't tie bullying to whether it's a public school or a private school. Bullying goes on in public schools and private schools and non-accredited schools. And that's the reality of the world we live in. So to use bullying as a factor is not that. Parents make the choices. They should be, if they're making it with their faith, and this is exactly what the Levin, and I brought an article from them, talks about. So we're supporting through this legislation and continued expansion of legislation, we are supporting private schools that teach, that use those public dollars to teach a certain religion. And that's the reality of what's going on now and will continue to go on. And this is expanding that. And 250% of poverty, I wish that we were using that guideline when we look at food assistance to be 250% of poverty. We're not. 250% of poverty is a family making over $60,000. So if that were the fair gauge for other assistant programs, then this might make sense. But we don't use that in the state of Kansas when we talk about families in need. So this isn't going to assist the majority of families that it's going to assist are those who, as was mentioned earlier, if you are a firefighter, your wife might be a doctor. Or if, so there's no correlation here with low income. We've moved, unfortunately, this has moved far away from low income.
In order to get a scholarship, you have to be 250% of the federal poverty level. So
$65,000 for family of three.
that's right, but there is a qualifier. You cannot make more than that and your students be eligible for this scholarship. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, of course, I didn't mean to imply that there is more bullying in one public school or private school. I'm only saying sometimes there are other issues in which a parent may want to pull a child out of their current school or maybe putting them in a different setting. Thank you.
Senator Petty.
So, Madam Chair, since you brought up an issue, and so I'm going to ask Tamara, so I don't misunderstand this. So on page 2, when it's in line 8, number 5, has a parent who's an emergency medical service provider, firefighter, or law enforcement officer, as such terms are defined. So does that, how does that fit into 250% of the federal poverty level?
Thank you. So the 250% of federal poverty level is currently required for people who are in the program. You are correct that the bill would add additional eligibility requirements that you mentioned on page 2, starting in line 3, it's paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. The federal poverty level would not apply to those eligibility requirements.
Thank you. So there could very, very easily be someone who is a firefighter whose wife is a APRN, or who is a doctor, or who is a lawyer, or whatever. So we're not talking about the federal poverty level any longer. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
My apologies, Senator Petty. I did not have that handy and I did check, so you are correct. So my apologies. Committee, any other comments? Senator Thomas. Senator Thomas, would you like to move your amendment?
Yeah, briefly, when we talk about it not being for low income, I'll let the title of the bill itself address that. It says it plain as day. Also, we heard multiple times, parents' choice, parents' choice. I'm worried about the kids. The kids did not choose low income. The kids don't get to choose how their parents, where they live, what their parents do, the income they make. And so I want to bring the focus back to the kids. This is about the low-income kids. This is not about parents made this choice, they made that choice. This is about making sure the kids are taken care of. And Senator, had the amendment come to increase the Promise Act funds, I would have voted for it. But that didn't happen. So I guess we'll do that another day. And with that, I move my amendment.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Gossage. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Are there any other amendments on this bill? Senator Sykes. And Senator, do you wish to explain or have the reviser?
I will do a summary and then I will let the reviser kind of fill into the details. So I think this is something we should all agree on, especially if we are saying that our SGOs are currently fulfilling their obligation to the law. This is putting in reporting so that we know a better understanding of the scholarships that are granted and how they are dispersed, and also number of students who apply for the program, number of students who apply who are determined eligible, and then the number of at-risk who receive the scholarship from the scholarship granting organization. So I think if we want to actually show that this program is working, that it is helping low-income students, this is just putting some of those requirements into statute. So, and I would be happy for the reviser to answer questions.
Okay, there's quite a bit here, so I will ask the reviser maybe to walk through some of the details of what this amendment entails. So, Reviser Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this amendment would bring into the bill 2 additional statutes that are part of the program. They just weren't included in the bill as it was originally introduced. And the first statute, you can see these in the attachment on the back of the bill. But the first statute would bring in 724354, and this is the statute that has to do with the requirements of a scholarship granting organization. And at the bottom of that statute, it's on page 3 of attachment A. Already in law, there's a requirement that these SGOs submit a report to the state board. This would just add that additional information that you see in blue to the report that the SGOs provide to the state board. The second statute that would be brought in, you can see on page 4 of the attachment, and that's 724355. And this is the statute that requires the state board to submit a report to the legislature, and it would add the information referenced by Senator Sykes to the report from the state board to the legislature.
Okay, that's helpful. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Tamara, what's in blue, is there significance why it's in blue?
Yes, thank you for the question. So if it's blue and underlined, that means it would be new language. And if it is red with a strike through, that would mean it would be stricken.
So as a follow-up, so that means as part of 72-4354, the addition is the number of eligible students awarded an educational scholarship who had previously received a scholarship under this program, and the number of eligible students awarded an educational scholarship for the first time. And then 6 as well, evidence verifying that 90% of the contribution received were awarded within the applicable 36-month time period as required by the statute. So that's the addition?
That would be the addition to that statute, yes.
Thank you.
So Tamara, in section 3, that language that is struck, that was already struck. That's not part of this amendment. Is that correct? On page 3, section 3, that was already struck of the attachment. Yes. Is that?
Yes, so if you're looking at the bill itself on page 3, what is currently section 3, and that stricken language that you see there on lines 22 through 34, that is currently struck in the bill.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just want to make sure that that wasn't anything new. Committee, what other questions do you have? Senator Shane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure I'm following this correctly, if I may direct the question to Senator Sykes. So the evidence verifying that 90% of the contributions received were awarded. So right now, the program is facilitated from the State Department of Education. Is that correct? I guess, where I'm going with this is, I'm trying to understand who the 90% benchmark will impact and how the program is marketed and how people learn about this program.
Senator Sykes?
So I think We are just asking that this be included on the report. It's already in the statute. So on page 2 on the balloon, and it's subsection B, that is current statute. And so we are already saying that they should do this. We are just requiring that in the report that the legislature gets, that they are including that to the legislature.
Thank you. And may I kind of redirect towards Revisor Lawrence? Your understanding of the law is written that 90%, that is of all funds contributed to the program, or that 90% applies to the institution receiving the scholarship fund?
Thank you for the question. So as the law is currently written, it says the scholarship granting organization shall disperse not less than 90% of the contributions received pursuant to the program.
And who is currently considered the scholarship who facilitates the program? Who is that body considered to be?
So there are multiple scholarship granting organizations, and they have to notify the State Board of Education of their intent to provide scholarships under this program.
Okay, so those would be private organizations? Am I understanding that correctly? Okay, so it would be incumbent on them to market the existence of the program to try to achieve that 90% dispersal rate.
The requirement to achieve the 90% dispersal rate is the responsibility of the scholarship granting organizations.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Sykes.
just to clarify, so I think Tamara did a really good job of talking about it. The scholarship organization is already required to distribute those 90% of contributions within 36 months. That is current law, but they are not reporting that. So again, that's why the report that I have where we just have totals. In previous years, some of the scholarship granting organizations have put that information voluntarily, but they have been neglecting it in the years. So this is just putting it in statute that they have that information. They know the money that's coming. They're supposed to be distributing it. So verifying for us that those dollars are getting in the hands of our children.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Senator Shane.
So what you're saying is right now what we're seeing the aggregate number trying to take total dispersed versus total contributed and hit the 90%, and you're wanting to see it on a per organization basis, the evidence that we didn't have one scholarship granting organization that dispersed 70% and another one that dispersed 98% to create somehow put together an aggregate average of 90. Is that your intent, Senator Sykes?
That is correct. And in previous reports, which I would be happy to share this, in previous years, we have gotten kind of that aggregate. It has been omitted the last year. And so we just have a total amount. In previous years, we were able to look, and I think at that time, 3 of the 11 had dispersed that, but the 7 had not. And then this year, in our report, we didn't get any of those numbers. So just trying to make sure that we are getting that.
So Tamara, is there anything in the current language that says that 90% for each SGO, or is it just 90% of the amount contributed as an aggregate?
Current law states the scholarship granting organization shall disperse not less than 90% of contributions received. My understanding of that is that would apply to each scholarship granting organization.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to clarify. So on page 1, we see that it refers to department, means the Kansas Department of Revenue. And then on other definitions, which would be on page 2, we see the term secretary, which means the Secretary of Revenue. Then we see state board, which means the State Board of Education. So I'm trying to remember when we originally passed this, are they subject to providing this data to both? And then it seems to be then we have conflicting information, is what you were saying about this, what's been reported to State Board, or what not necessarily reported, but what the state revenue shows the Department of Revenue shows and what the State Board of Education shows. They're reporting to both, is that correct?
Tamara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as far as the reporting requirement goes, current law requires the scholarship granting organizations to submit those reports to the state board. However, because this is a tax credit program, it does involve the Department of Revenue, and they also have responsibilities under this program.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any penalties associated if no evidence is shown or proper evidence is not shown of the 90%?
Senator Sykes.
So I think that would go to current law, which I don't think there is any teeth in this. And again, I think that's why we're trying to get more information, because the statute says that each SGO is supposed to distribute 90% of that. And we don't have the information. And so we're just asking. I think this was a miss and when the bill was crafted originally in 2015, whenever that went into state. But so they're required to do this. We don't know if they're doing it or not. And that's what, just trying to get the reporting so we have a better understanding.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Gossage.
I'm sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. So we say they're already required to do this, but were they required to give the number of students who apply to the program, the number of students who applied determined to be eligible, the number of at-risk students who received a scholarship, or is this new that they have to report on?
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. The underlined blue parts are new. And this is, so the section 4 on page 4, the number of students, these are all new. This is so that we have a better understanding of the efficacy of the program, making sure that we are targeting and getting the students who are at the most risk for this, that we say this is helping those students. So it's just getting the data so we are able to look at that. Again, the other part, the new, the 90%, like this is currently in law. We're just not getting any information to where we're able to see if the law is being followed.
So, Madam Chair, we're asking the scholarship entity to determine if students are at risk or not, rather than just based upon income, because, right, that they would have to determine income? No.
Senator Sykes.
I'm just asking for clarification. Thank you.
No, thank you for the question, and that is not correct, but I'm going to let Tamara answer that.
Tamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there are two reporting requirements. One is for the scholarship granting organizations, and those reporting requirements are the blue underlined paragraph 5 at the bottom of page 3 of the attachment and paragraph 6 at the top of page 4. So those would be the additional requirements for the scholarship granting organizations. What you see later on the page 4 of the attachment, so that section 4 that brings in 724355, the number of students who apply to the program, the number who apply who are determined to be eligible, and the number of at-risk students, that would be part of the second reporting requirement, and that would be the responsibility of the state board to report that to the legislature.
Thank you. That makes more sense than instead of the scholarship entity determining who's at risk and not at risk. Thank you.
Just to clarify on that, we are asking the scholarship granting organization to show us the students who are continuing to get this versus new. So that's information that they would have, but the state board would have those other qualifications.
Senator Shane, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to build off of that, I want to make sure that I'm tracking the definition of at-risk here. In theory, I guess with the exception of the children of first responders, everyone that receives a scholarship would, according to other statutory definitions of at-risk, would be at risk because of the poverty threshold? Or I guess what do we mean by at-risk in this particular report?
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I'm going to answer, and then if I say something wrong, I'll let the reviser correct it. So people can apply for this. They may or may not be eligible. So if this goes into law, it would be 250% of federal poverty or you had a parent who would fit those scenarios. So that would tell you if they're eligible or not. Some people would not receive because of that. And the number of at-risk students, these are, and we have a statute that lists all of the at-risk requirements of what you would qualify as at risk. But this is just showing, I think, to see if someone would have been maybe not succeeding in their public school and they were at risk, foster children could, but it's showing us that we are getting people who participate in this program because they are not, I think that's the intent of the original, was low income, and it was the lowest 100 performing schools, and it was trying to get students who were at risk for failure. And so I think this is it, just looking to see if those students that I think the original intent of the legislation are actually the students who are receiving it.
Senator Shane?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, at risk for reasons other than qualifying for free or reduced lunch.
Senator Sykes?
That is correct. It would be any of the list of at risk.
Could the revisor remind us of the statutory definition of at risk?
Advisor Lawrence?
So there are two ways that statutes address and define at-risk students. One is for the purpose of the school finance formula, and that is free lunch students. The other is in KSA 725153A, that talks about that students shall be identified as eligible to receive at-risk programs and services if they meet one or more of the listed criteria there, and there are 12 criteria listed in that statute for a student to be identified as eligible to receive at-risk programs and services.
And I guess one of the things that I want to understand is the scholarship criteria versus the at-risk criteria. And maybe it's the free lunch criteria. I don't remember. I know that there's some, I don't know if it's 1.5x federal poverty or what the thresholds are for free and reduced lunch. I guess maybe if you could just remind us of what those thresholds are.
Is it, I think it's 185. Matthew Willis might be able to help us off the top of my head. I thought it was 185. Matthew.
Madam Chair, Matthew Willis with Research. So the top end of reduced lunch is, I believe, 85%, as you said, of the poverty guidelines, and I believe free is 135, but I could confirm. I know for this year, the top end of reduced lunch was around, I think, $57,000 for a family of four, and reduced was, I think, more around 40 or 42,000 for the top, for the top end of free for a family of four.
Thank you. Okay, committee, any other questions? Seeing none, Senator Sykes, would you like to move your amendment?
A second.
Okay.
I would like to move my amendment.
Yes, do we have a second? Senator Petty, second. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion fails. Division has been called. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion fails 4-5. Do we have any other amendments on Senate Bill 87? Oh, that is correct. The revisor does have a technical amendment that she would like to draw our attention to.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do not have a balloon for this, so my apologies, but it is just a change in the title. Starting in line 2, the word eliminating through line 4, enrolled in public school, that phrase there, that entire phrase, eliminating through enrolled in public school, does not apply to the contents of the bill, so I would respectfully ask the committee to strike that from the title of the bill.
Does everyone follow that? Okay. Do we have a Senator Petty?
So Tamara, I'm trying to just repeat back. So eliminating, is it just the word eliminating, or is it eliminating the eligibility requirement that students shall have been previously enrolled in public school?
The whole phrase.
The whole phrase, okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Okay, committee, do we have a motion on that technical amendment? Senator Shane moves. Do we have a second? Senator Thomas, any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay, that motion passes. So we are back on the bill. Do I have a motion to pass this out? Senate Bill 87 as amended. Senator Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we pass Senate Bill 87 out favorably as amended.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Rose. Any further discussion? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No surprise to anyone, I will not be supporting this. I really believe if this program is helping, and we should have all supported unanimously for more reporting so that if it is something that we need to expand, it's no longer a low-income student scholarship. You can get your 138% of the federal poverty is where we're saying that you are eligible for health care in this state. And now we're saying 250% of federal poverty can get a tax credit, which is going to reduce our SGF. So I will be opposing it. Again, I'm very upset that we don't want to even make sure that these organizations are abiding by the law, which we know they are not. Thank you.
Senator Gossage.
I just want to clarify that through the ACA, you have up to 250% of the poverty level is the cutoff to be able to receive double premium credits, and they're considered low income. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's, I appreciate Tamara providing us with a technical correction, but this just doubly reinforces the fact that no longer will this act be referred to as eliminating since we eliminated the eligibility requirement that students shall have previously enrolled in public school. It definitely has opened it up as many have wanted it to be. I think when we rejected the amendment that was offered by Senator Sykes, we made it clear that we don't really want clear information provided on who this program is serving and what their income levels are and whether they actually have been children in public school. So we've pretty much eliminated all of those requirements by rejecting having what we asked for, but what we're not getting. And we had testimony when this bill was heard, SB 87, about some of those organizations, one of which is the CEF, the Catholic Education Foundation, which actually provides the bulk of these scholarships. And I can just share with you that they are very anxious to see this legislation pass because they want to promote it even more to the families that they serve. And as I told you already, my children went to the parochial school. And so I certainly expect that people should have the right to practice their faith, but I don't know that our public dollars should be supporting that. And we should have the information about whether they actually are receiving an education that exceeds that of our public institutions, that we keep putting even more requirements on for reporting. When we've heard a bill about assessments, about assessment committees, and we keep putting greater and greater expectations on reporting from our public schools, but yet when we come to giving away our public dollars to private institutions, we don't necessarily see that that's important to have that information. That's why it makes it very hard to say that there's a more qualified education happening someplace outside of what 90% of our children are receiving in Kansas. I would be a no on this.
Committee, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion passes. Senator Sykes would like to be recorded as a no. Senator Argabright and Senator Petty. Anyone else? Okay, committee, that is going to conclude our work for today. I will let you know we are going to work bills tomorrow. Real quickly, I will tell you, we will start with 49, 48, 78, 76, 47, 45, and 114. And if we do not get all of those worked, we will meet Monday to finish. So, yes, Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On my calendar, I have, is education also meeting at 9:30?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for the confusion. We will not be meeting at 9:30. That is government efficiency, but we will meet at our normal time tomorrow. So thank you for the clarification. Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. Seeing no other